Their motto is the best in class customer experience. But when you look into their, employee motto, it's about employee-centricity. It starts from there, what I'm trying to tell you. So it starts from the vision and the mission. And if it is not a practice in a meeting room that we have to have our vision, we have to have our mission, we have to have our cultures, etc., it should not stay there. It should become the culture of the organization. And it starts, as Alim said, it starts from the CEO.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. It's me again, Joe Espana, welcoming you to another episode of GOBO. I hope you're enjoying the chats with my guests. If you are, please do subscribe, share, and even get in touch if you'd like a particular topic discussed. Now, those of you who know me will know I have a particular interest in how organizations tackle the subject of employee engagement, or perhaps their overall approach to successfully managing the employee experience. The recent pandemic, of course, has brought the subject into stark relief. What I find interesting is that despite all the efforts, according to Gallup and others, the dial on employee engagement hasn't moved that much in the last 20-odd years. We've labeled things differently in that time, from employee satisfaction to employee engagement, and now employee experience. But while we might have swapped the labels around, it doesn't seem to be an area of organizational life that we've fully cracked. Will we ever? Well, with this in mind, I thought I'd have a chat with my two dear friends, Rengin, Onay, and Alim Erginoglu. They're both seasoned professionals in this space, having wide industry experience right up to exec level. Check them out on LinkedIn. They now run Real Focus Consulting, specializing in all things employee experience. I wanted to ask them, why are we still not getting it right with employee engagement? I've been having so many different conversations with people and organizations where the origin of the conversation is all the implications that COVID and the lockdown has made for work, this idea of work and being an employee and working, etc., and where is work and what does work actually mean, etc. And it occurred to me that I think we're living in a period where for the first time in probably ages and ages, maybe even the first time, we've got 4 different generations in the workplace at the same time. That's fine, except that the expectations of baby boomers, maybe you and I, and the expectations of millennials, the way that they view work and our expectations and how we associate with the notion of our employer is completely different. And I think COVID has accelerated all of these issues. And so it gets us to the subject of where are we with the notion of employee engagement? Because I can remember 2008, roughly, 2007, 2008, I was doing some desktop research, almost coincidentally at the same time as Nita Clark and David McLeod here in the UK were doing their research for the previous Labour government, and they produced all their stuff around engagement. And it occurred to me that actually, if you look at Gallup research and EY and other people who are researching this, the level of employee engagement in businesses hasn't moved much in the last, 20 years. What do you think?
Well, you reminded me of my early days in my career, Joe. And yes, I'm an X generation. So what I remember in around, I think, 1990s, late 90s, I used to work for Coca-Cola, and it was the first time I heard about employee happiness survey.
Or satisfaction.
Satisfaction. Yeah, satisfaction. Yeah. And so in those days, we were I was trying to understand what employee satisfaction is, because it was a new concept. and I didn't know how to, roll out a survey, etc. So our president by then, he was asking me, what do you understand from employee satisfaction? Why do you think we have to satisfy employees, or should we not? Great questions. And I was like,
Brilliant.
I don't know. So since then, it was about, employee satisfaction, engagement, happiness, etc., etc. The names are changing, but actually whatever we're trying to do as professionals is not changing the topic that we are trying to understand our employees. Yeah,
I totally agree. You find this the point you're making here in the subject of satisfaction, engagement, happiness, whatever. I feel that in my 30 plus years, the same is true for many other subjects, in terms of the employee relationship, all that kind of thing. We come up with new labels, like the newest one is employee experience, but basically the elements that are involved are all much of the similar, in terms of people's expectations, etc., etc. So anyway, so I totally agree with your point. Please continue.
Yeah, and by the way, thanks to Alim that he reminded me of the word of satisfaction, because he knows better than I do how many name changes happened in this area.
We love following new trends, or we love creating new names.
Yeah, new labels.
The same thing.
Yeah,
but we probably, I mean, the big question is, has employee engagement replaced by employee experience? Well, my answer would be very straightforward. Absolutely not.
It's really, it's interesting.
It shouldn't.
But I think in terms of a label, it has. I think you hear people talk a lot more about, in our profession, employee experience, and it's kind of connected in their mind with quite rightly, I imagine, with, they want to be employer of choice, looking at how the brand is perceived by potential employees, out there in the market. I think the label has swapped over, but I totally agree with you that in terms of what it's about, it probably hasn't changed. The only way that and I'd be really interested to hear from listeners whether I'm sort of on the right track here. I have a very simple view about it in terms of employee experience, employee engagement. I always think of employee experience is the input, and employee engagement is almost like the product or the output of having done something to create an experience for employees where they feel engaged, or they feel like they want to be here, and they want to work with these people, and they feel that they're enjoying or feel satisfied and have a personal fulfillment of what they're doing.
Yeah, through the years, being an X-generation member, through years not even understanding what satisfaction survey is, now I developed myself, or I grew. So similar to myself, that we grow through the years. Now, as you said, that we understand what employee engagement is, what employee experience is. So we can now talk about an experience from pre-hire to retire. So at the very beginning of this concept, we were just trying to understand what employees think about us. And by the years, the concepts, questions, the surveys, etc., have also changed. So did we. And now we can, as human resources professionals, looking back, we grow a lot, but not as much as maybe marketing, etc., grew. Because as a human resources professionals, we do not understand that marketing concept, and nobody understands us as HR professionals, or people don't like talking to us. So we grow with it, we learn with it. And that's why I think it's difficult from some perspectives. And what I also feel funny is that, customer is king. Without the customers, companies cannot, make money, profits, revenues, whatsoever. So we're all trying to focus on the business results, but we never focus on employee results. So over the years, actually, this concept is like a big bang. Customer satisfaction. Okay. Now it's the employee satisfaction or the employee experience. Because if I am happy, then my customer is happy. So that's how it evolved. But it is still evolving. And
I agree.
Alim has a great experience in those fields. So maybe he would like to add
Alim,
something.
I'm going to ask you a question around this about Rengin's mentioned here, because I believe, and I'm really interested in your kind of like research and your surveying experience in particular, because I don't know if I'm right. Okay, I really don't know if I'm right, but I perceive a mismatch between business leaders in an organization and HR professionals in an organization in terms of this. What the two communities, and it's not going to be black or white, okay? I think it's shades of gray, but I think the two communities come at the subject that we're talking about differently from different perspectives. Sometimes I think business leaders, and I ask myself, why should they know? Why should they, that's why they've got HR professionals working with them and maybe external providers. But actually they should know that the survey, just doing a survey, whatever that might be, that is not employee engagement. And very
it
often,
is not.
and please tell us about this, because I think my perception is there's still a feeling out there that the sheer activity of once a year a big surveying of questions around a whole range of subjects is somehow in itself engaging for employees. I don't believe it, but what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes when we present to the CEOs or general managers of the organization our survey results, I always look at them and I ask them, there's something wrong here. And they look at me like, well, what's he going to say? I always say, excuse me, madam, excuse me, sir, but we should have seen you at the beginning, not now. Where were you? I mean, you're the captain of the ship. And I think this is the biggest failing point of the correlation between, or the relationship between employee experience and engagement. We always think that employee experience is just a survey, just a project, and HR is the owner, and we dump everything to HR. Well, let's make a very simple three-way system, like a triangle. On the top, there's leadership, like CEO, directors. On the other end, managers. And the third point, all employees. So this is a triangle. Where's HR? HR is in the middle. It's like a bridge. So employee experience is a kind of teamwork between those three personas or groups. So if we leave the whole employee experience exercise or the topic or the concept to HR, it will fail.
Yeah, totally.
Because top management will go to HR and say, okay, run this project, make everyone engaged, create a fantastic employee experience program.
Yeah.
And they also say, oh, I was in the US and I heard from Google that they use this sort of person or that sort of person. I mean, this is not a copy and paste exercise.
Yeah, totally.
So if I'm HR, I'm like, okay, my leader is asking me to create this. So I see this as a project. I get stressed. I start to use all the tools and instruments of the world, technology, bring this consultant. And managers are the same because they're, kind of squeezed in the middle. Pressure from the top management, pressure from the employees. And what they do, they go to HR. They say, make my employees engaged and make me shine. Bring me the results, data. And employees are kind of spectators. They're not the actors. They're just sitting there waiting for a survey to come once in a year. And in 15 minutes, they're part of the equation. They feel like, they're asking me some questions. And then it's a chaos.
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on that point, what do you think, from your experiences, what do you think companies are doing apart from what you've mentioned already, like, the conversation early before the activity about, what we're trying to achieve here, how we work together in order to achieve it, all these kind of good things, and sort of the senior decision-making level and senior level engagement in the subject rather than handing it over. What you've just described in another context for me is almost like training. So you get a line manager somewhere, approaches either HR or L&D and says, look, this person needs either some coaching or some training, etc. Put them on a course. When they're fixed, give them back to me so I can, benefit from their performance improvement. Almost like thinking, well, as a manager, the line manager, I have no connection with the end result. It's, get it fixed, give me the pill fixed, and then, come back. So what you just described for me is a little bit like that. But I'm just wondering, what's not happening other than what you've mentioned? What else is not happening in your experience in organizations in order to really grapple with this issue of creating an overarching experience by design, intentional, throughout the life cycle of the employee, where part of the result, I mean, I think there's more than one result. One result might be engagement, but the other results will be creativity, productivity, innovation, all the other good things that an organization is expecting from its human assets, if you like. So what's not happening?
Yeah, I think it should go beyond employee engagement or experience, like a chewing gum or it's a tick on the box. We're working with a client, so they have a brilliant, how should I say, corporate culture booklet or whatever that they work together with, great consultants, etc. So they design, their motto is creating the best in class customer experience. Okay. And but when you look into their, employee motto, it's about employee-centricity. So actually, this tells you that it starts from there, what I'm trying to tell you. So it starts from the vision and the mission. And if it is not a practice in a meeting room that we have to have our vision, we have to have our mission, we have to have our cultures, etc., it should not stay there. It should become the culture of the organization. And it starts, as Alim said, it starts from the CEO. I remember from Shell, I was like, oh my God, kind of a feeling when I first saw a CEO job description in Shell. It was one sentence. CEO's role is to protect the company and its assets. Full stop.
Okay.
So beneath it, revenue, environment, health, employees, la 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 la. It's about protecting the reputation and assets of the company. So this tells you a lot of things about what that chair actually has to do. But in our world, it's all about like ticking the box. Have you done the survey? Yes, I did. Did you do the focus groups? Yes, I did. But I still don't understand what these employees are asking from us. Going back to my example, that company's, customer satisfaction is really very good. But when you talk about the employees, there are still areas to improve, but they are really minor things. But the mindset is focusing on the customer. Okay, employees, they can come and go, la 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 la. But actually, the magic is here. If you fix this part, this employee part of the business, then the rest is nirvana. It's like pat on the shoulder. How are you, Joe? how's your son Alim, kind of things that you are always be remembered. How you treat people is remembered, not what you did to the people. So that's why I think it should go beyond ticking the box and, okay, we did it, etc., but internalizing it, feeling it. Why am I here? Why am I here to provide to the employees or the workspace so that they can deliver their best for our business results and for our customers?
You've used the F word, which I love, because Alim,
Did I?
yeah, I'll tell you what the F word is. I'll tell you what
Oh dear.
you use the word feeling. What is the feeling?
Okay.
It's a great
Yeah.
thing, because just picking up on your earlier point, Alim, I very often I find that if I do get, high enough up the tree, MD, general manager, CEO, around a conversation that the HR director or HR VP or whoever they are want me to have with the CEO, and they're engaged, that the senior person is engaged really, really early. A question that I like to ask, which usually they stumped, because nobody's asked them this question before. And the question I love to ask, partly for the reaction, but also because I'm curious, right, is I always like to ask, how do you want your employees to feel or not feel here? And of course, nobody's asked them that question before. It's all about, as you say, the assets, the operational efficiency, all the mechanics that make an organization operate effectively, etc., and produce for their customers in their market what they want to produce. But nobody's made them think beyond the surface of, okay, tell me how you would love your employees to feel and what you want them not to feel, if at all possible, while they're here with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, everything, Joe, starts with the awareness. I mean, let me put it that way, because your point was fantastic. Everyone looks from their own angle. I mean, it's like a valley, but we're taking photographs, but from different hills of the same valley, and we see the valley very differently from our angle. So employee experience is very similar to this. There are two main lines or angles. One is from the top management angle, or organizational experience. This is what organization wants to establish as an experience to everyone. This is one lane. And the other lane is my experience.
Yeah.
And I think there's a misalignment or a gap between these two lanes or these two angles. So as an organization, obviously, the starting point or the objective of our existence is business success. I like to be profitable. I like to sell and bring more revenue and profit to the organization. And obviously, as an organization, I want my employees to perform and be efficient. But on the other hand, as an employee, my experience is my feelings, my perceptions, my happiness, my salary. It's more me.
Of course.
So if the gap is huge between these two lanes or angles, then I think this is the starting point. We need to be aware of what we are facing. If the gap is huge, it means there's a risk, big risk, or risks.
Totally.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you've prompted a thought in my mind, which is connected to. There's two things on my mind. The first is the notion of being customer centric and thinking about what must we do in order with our brand and how we engage with our market in order to be successful. And the internal part of it is, what kind of culture should we create in order to make that possible? And of course, employee experience, employee engagement is all part of it. But it reminds me, sort of going back to our previous comments about probably nothing new under the sun. I can remember having these conversations exactly the same thing mid-80s when the work came out of I think it was Harvard around service profit chain. And service profit chain, that model, or service values chain as it's now I think called, said, the end output, so profitability, revenues, and customer loyalty derives because you're providing service quality and meeting customers' expectations. You're keeping the customer happy so they come back, so you're creating loyalty. But then the internal side is there needs to be all sorts of things in place in order to create the conditions. And I don't mean just operational conditions, I mean employee situation experience in order for that output with the customer to exist.
Absolutely. My husband starts working years ago when he was in Atlanta for the first ever open Ritz-Carlton in the world.
Oh, wow.
So their motto was, we, ladies and gentlemen, are here to serve you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, I remember that.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And so he told me, I think they were taken like 3 months or 6 months orientation onboarding by Ritz-Carlton, and they were served as customers. The menus, the duvets, the pillows, everything. So actually they internalized that they are ladies and gentlemen to serve ladies and gentlemen. So that's simply brilliant. So that's
Absolutely.
how you make your employee feel that you are important, so that you can also, provide services excellently to the ladies and gentlemen because you are a lady and gentleman. So that's just brilliant.
But this is what culture is about, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Culture is not something we write down and say, okay, our cultures are A, B, C, E, F, G. No, it's the reflection of the values. What you do, not what you say.
Exactly.
Exactly. And one other thing, obviously, your example is a brilliant example, Joe, from a service sector. But also, sometimes in our sector, we don't have a connection with our clients or customers. And we sometimes crave to see what's the meaning of me here, how my job is touching to the customer out there. So it's also important for the leaders, directors, whoever they are, to make that connection.
Yeah, to be connected. Definitely.
And also, what I believe is, I think I don't like to say the golden things, but I think the golden rule is know your employee. Who your employees, and understand their needs. I remember when in my junior years, there was a director I was working with, and in our first conversations, he wanted to get to know me. Where I live, if I've got a partner or kids, and he realized that I have a big love for coffee. So believe me, for years before every meeting, I used to get a message or an email from him saying that I'm at this coffee shop. What would you like? Do you still like to have an Americano or espresso or something like that? So it made me feel like, first of all, it wasn't fake because he really cared. He knew that I like to start my morning with a coffee or things like that. So know your employee is the key thing. And it reflects to the customer as well. Know your customer.
I totally agree. And you've used the F word as well, Alim. Yeah, it made me feel. When I was looking at this thing I think, one of the things that sometimes comes up in conversations with my clients is they'll go, our definition of employee experience or employee engagement, or whatever. Sometimes I think that it's not super critical to have a absolute definition of what it all means, as long as there is sufficient. Now, is the tricky word. How much is sufficient, right? How much is it? But as long as there's sufficient general understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve and why we're doing it, etc., in the organization, I think that's it gets the train out of the station, let's put it this way. But then I think that whatever you do in terms of creating this and sort of trying to intentionally design an employee experience, I think you mustn't lose sight of four key elements. And this is why I think the F word is really important. Because I think, well, the research, I only did paper research rather than I tested it out with clients later, but the desktop research seemed to suggest, and we looked at Towers Watson and many others who are doing hard research on this, Gallup and everything else. But I think there's something around trust, how the employee feels about trusting and being trusted as being part of this organization. I think there's another element which is probably a version of culture, which is the climate that exists with my team members and my direct line boss, the atmosphere, the environment. And the third thing, which absolutely speaks to the F word, is the emotional connection that an employee could have with their employer and their line manager and everything else. And this is not to say it's always going to be 100% brilliant every single day of work. Sometimes we have bad days, right? We're human beings. Mm-hmm. But this emotional connection, I think, is an important one. Now, the fourth element, I believe, is the biggest challenge that organizations have, and that's one of ownership. And what I mean by that is, I don't know what the percentage is, but it seems to me there's a bigger percentage of organizations and managers perceiving that employee engagement or employee experience is something that we do to the employees. We create it, we manage it, we sustain it, and it's being done to the employees. I think if we could get over this hurdle and get employees to take ownership of their own level of engagement, that's nirvana, where people choose how they want to engage with their employee and ultimately how they feel about things. Because then, feelings drive many things, definitely drives behavior in an organization. You don't leave the house and leave your feelings at the front door. You take them with you, right? And if you didn't have a good night's sleep, maybe you're already coming into work in a bad mood. I don't know. But I think Absolutely. That this idea of, organizations do it to employees is probably not necessarily the right angle of attack, maybe.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned about ownership, trust, climate, and emotional connection. So these are all about feelings. So let's put this aside. So for me to stay or leave in an organization depends on three things. The very first one is my boss. The second one is my colleagues, my peers or my team, etc. And the third one is my salary. So taking the third one aside, the first two talks to my emotions and feelings. So if anything goes wrong with my manager and with my peers, even though my salary is high, then I would start thinking of quitting my job.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Which is about ownership, trust, climate, and emotional connection. So that's why, as you say, that connection is so important with your boss, it's all about the climate. We make that climate a breathable one or a poisoned one. It's all up to me. I can come to work and just say, I will piss Joe. And yesterday, Alim said something at the meeting which annoyed me. I'll show him today. I'll show him. And I can poison you to the hell until you both resign and I feel like victory. So
it's a great point. It's a great point. I'm sorry to cut across you, because what you've reminded me is, and again, when I was sort of looking at this subject, one of the questions that I was trying to discover the answer to is, and maybe Alim, you've got a particular answer to this question, but I was trying to discover what's the smallest unit or place where employee engagement or employee experience actually lives in an organization. And apart from the individual, as you've just said, Alim, the smallest unit is the team. And it's exactly what you've just said. So in the team is my relationship with what I'm doing, my relationship with my colleagues, my relationship with my boss. And if those three spinning plates feel good, I'm likely to want to stay. Always assuming, we have to put something on the table here, which is always assuming that economically it makes sense for me to stay as well, because, I might feel great, but if I can't, in the cost of living crisis, if I can't pay my mortgage or put food on the table or warm the house or whatever, that might be a consideration. But always take the pay and reward out of the equation. I think that's the unit. That's the smallest unit. What do you reckon, Alim?
Yeah, I totally agree. I have a also similar description of the connections, but I put it in a very simple way. Rational connection is the head.
Yeah.
So everything starts there. Every relationship starts with the chemical connection, isn't it? The rational connection. When we look at the organization, does the brand fits with me, their values, mission, vision, etc. But that this is the first connection. So this is the head. And secondly, we need the romantic part, the hearts, the emotional connection. Feeling proud. Am I feeling proud about the organization or the brand or our services or how we reflect ourselves to the society? And the team, do I love being with my team, or do I feel like in Mediterranean region we use this a lot? Is it a family? Is it like a family?
Yeah.
So that's the romantic part, emotional part. We need that connection. Also the connection with our managers. If we have a really healthy connection with our managers, then we feel we feel the organization from our hearts. But the third step is extremely crucial. If one of them is missing, if one of the connections are missing here, then we are not ready to go an extra mile.
Yeah, I totally agree.
This is the motivation. And, from the simple point of view, we need this, because if we're not motivated, if one of those connections are missing, then maybe this is not the right place for us. We start thinking about staying there or not, or maybe we're strolling through Total Jobs or Reed or whatever, trying to find a new company for us. So these three connections, rational connection, emotional connection, and motivation, which I call motivation hands, head, heart, and then hands.
Yeah.
We do the job with our hands and legs or whatever, with our body. But therefore, we put an extra mile. We put a discretionary effort. We have higher empathy to others, if those connections are in place. And also the key thing is, if everything is right, then I am the ambassador of the company.
That was an amazing conversation, but I must rush. I put the dinner on to slow cook a while ago, and I need to check how it's doing. So in the meantime, you can tap below to get the links and show notes. And if you enjoyed what you heard and you want to hear more, why not follow or subscribe to the show, share the podcast, or tell your friends about GOBO. But most importantly, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me, Joe Espana, on LinkedIn or get in touch via the website. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let me have your thoughts, questions, or ideas for topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Take care, and I'll catch up with you next time. Adios, hasta pronto.